What's up YouTube, this is Slaan here, and following on from the last video we're going to start looking at using the world editor to, well, I've titled this city building series, and I suppose this is eventually going to end up as Slaan Hatton 2.0, but for now we're going to keep it simple. How to add, remove prefabs from a map in the world editor, how to start looking at the world editor prefab pack that I released in the last video, and using that to put some prefabs together which we're then going to extract. So this is a little bit different to when I looked at the military areas in the last video, and I'm starting to toy around a bit. I talked very loosely about the streets and the bridge prefabs last time, but this is a bit more of a better idea of kind of where I'm going at the minute and how I'm using all of these little prefabs to set up some bigger areas. And the plan for this video is just to give you a little demonstration on how you can add and remove the prefabs, what the elusive save button is actually doing, and then we're going to load up this map in a single player game, and I'm going to start extracting these two streets as a single prefab, because although this looks rather seamless and like a single build, when we enable the bounds, you can see there is a lot more than just one big prefab there. Yeah, so this looks at the idea of just dropping a load of things into an area that work together, and then hopefully the idea is I'll be able to extract, there's like what, say about 15 prefabs per street, and we're going to try and do all of these into a single prefab itself. The reason being, if I just flick onto the other screen, this is the world folder for the map that I'm loaded in, and in particular we want to be looking at the Prefabs Xml, which I've already got loaded up here. So in this map we have there's two buildings, sorry, but they're there just more for me, just to see how they blend in with the roads and stuff like that, so they will be getting pulled out. But at the minute you can see we're at 172 lines of prefabs, and can you imagine how big this is going to grow by the time we've filled a whole map or added this particular bit into another map? So the idea is, or the theory is at the moment, where possible, if this selection of prefabs here is what I've put down to make up a single street, then is it not more practical to just make one prefab of all these pieces, so to speak? So I'm using the world editor at the minute. If I just bring you back into the game view, so I'm using the world editor at the minute just to create an area that kind of is starting to pick up the feel and the look that I want to try to achieve across these inner city areas. And I'm finding it myself a lot easier to play with these little builds and then make more informed and permanent decisions by extracting, like I was just saying earlier, the full streets as single prefabs. And one reason for looking at it like this, if we go to this spot here where the buildings are, so these are just vanilla prefabs that have been thrown in there just to see how they would look sitting in the streets. And I quite like the look. It's far from perfect. You can see the biome loot blocks are spawning in, but we don't actually have any traffic spawning on the roads where the prefabs are being dropped in. So what I'll probably end up doing when I start making more permanent streets is putting things like the traffic in as part of the prefab itself. But you can see here, it would have been nice, I suppose, to have this little piece of path cut out and make a proper ramp up into this car park, and that's the type of thing I can probably do when I extract this whole street as a single prefab. So you can see at the minute it's made up of two pieces. So in a nutshell, the general idea is to extract this as a single prefab, and on that prefab we'll make all of these little edits that's going to make the buildings fit in nice. Now it's a bit of a long-winded way to go about it, but I think with a bit of time and effort the results are going to look way better. And like I say, I'm trying to find a middle ground between dumping all these little prefabs in and dumping massive prefabs in a la old style Slaan Hatton. So we'll see how it goes, and I think as this video series progresses on and I hit different stages in the development of the map, I'll probably record new videos, fill you in on the changes, and then demonstrate some feature of editing the world itself. So I do intend to cover terrain edits and editing the Splat 3, which is the roadmap, and all sorts of other things, but we'll keep it simple to start with, and we'll look at just how you can do what I've done here, or make something like the military base that was in the last video, and then maybe extract that into a single prefab, which you could potentially touch up, add your own sleepers to, etc., and then share that via the forums for other people to enjoy. Because at the minute, I'm definitely going to have an attempt at splicing this little bit of city into another map, just to see how I would go about that, but it's going to be a very long-winded little exercise, but that's further down the line. So for now, I'll get rid of these bounds, and we'll look at some basic controls of the editor and how we can start using the prefab pack itself. So I'm just going to dive over here, and you can see all the little prefabs that make up this area, you know, match up nice with the row. I mean, look at that. You know, it looks good, but I don't think this is super practical. So we're going to go over to this bit, and we'll pretend that those bridges don't exist, and that I will put bridges here eventually. But this is going to be a good little demonstration of how we can start using the bridge pieces to make your own giant bridges. So Z is where I'm going to, I'll just get off a claim block. The controls in the world editor are pretty much the same as the editor. All the features and tabs, as far as I can tell, that work in the prefab editor also work here. I don't think there's anything else really control wise that you need to know that I wouldn't have already covered in other videos, but for reference, all of the actual controls are in here. But the main thing that you're going to use in the world editor is the selection box. So important thing to remember, even though we can move and raise and lower the prefab once we put it in, it's no biggie really, but prefabs will spawn to the north and east from this selection area. A single block sized selection area is all you need, and other than that we'll probably use G to slide this around, and we'll probably not need to use Shift and J at all, but anyway, we'll just dive straight in. So pop your selection area down, go to the prefabs tab, and this is where the prefab pack comes in handy, because the bridge is broken down into support sections and actual pieces that fit in between. So I think you can probably just see it from here. Looks like one prefab, but is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces of prefab per lane, but those two end pieces are the same prefab, just rotated. These two middle pieces of the same prefab, just rotated. We've got a single tall support, and then this support here is being copied and rotated on both sides. It's like building with Lego. You just line the things up, and that's pretty much it. So get your selection box down, get your prefab that you want. Now section 03 is, as you can see from the thumbnail, is where the bridge starts or ends. And we're going to use the load into button. So I'm just going to click that. Now what we've got here is the prefab box. It's showing you the bounds, the outside edges of the whole prefab. And left clicking, it'll select and deselect this area. But basically, we're free to move the prefab around. You can hold in G, you know, it'll slide. I can move it up or down. Now, once you're a bit more familiar with the prefabs, you'll kind of get the idea of, okay, this is going to need to be dropped down about a dozen blocks and slide probably about 5 or 6 blocks to the left. But for now, just to show you, I'm just going to pretend that I'm happy and press place prefab. And there you go, the prefab's in there. So as I've just said, I knew this was going to happen. So we need to move this, what's that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blocks down. And so that this curb lines up with this road, it's going to have to come, it's about 5 blocks to the left there. So with the prefab selected, I'm going to hold in G, and we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we'll grab that axis. I'll turn around actually so you can see the arrow a little better, because sometimes these are a little bit fiddly to see. And I'm just holding down G to move the basic box. So we want to go 6 down, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now once I've moved it, we go back into this menu and press place prefab again. And as you can see, it hangs for a little bit. Now I've never had the editor directly crash from moving and adjusting prefabs. However, the bigger the build is, the more detailed the build is, the longer that it's going to take to actually load the prefab in, or in the case of moving it, if I just slide this along, and we'll actually do the right hand side instead. If I press place prefab again, you see it'll hang and it'll actually remove this bridge and then slide it along. So there we have it. And this brings me on to the next important point of what actually gets saved when we save this prefab in. So terrain changes do not get saved. As far as I can tell, all we do when we press the save button is update the Prefabs XML that I've just showed you before. So there's a simple little demonstration I can do to show you that. So I haven't actually saved this yet, and I'm not going to. I'm going to flick over onto the other screen so you can watch the XML. Now if I just highlight this bottom row here, just for reference, and I'll leave that highlighted. Now I'm going back into the game. I'm going to press escape, and now I'm going to press save. And you can see straight away Xcustom Bridge section 03 is being added to the bottom. Now that's a permanent addition to the map. I can, if I come back onto the desktop and go back into game, there we go. Easiest way to test is the change OK, is to simply exit and reload. And we're on Guzzazi Mountains. Now the world editor doesn't take long to load up, so a lot of the time I'll do half a dozen prefabs, save them, reload the map, make sure the prefabs are there, because things like those holes that I made when I moved the prefab will be corrected and gone now. Now I believe you can actually teleport a decent distance away, let the chunk deload and then come back and it'll actually correct itself, but for a world like this where there's not a lot in it, as you can see, it's like 30 seconds, 40 seconds to load back into the map, so there's not a lot of time wasted to check these changes, and sure enough, there we go. So that's how we load a prefab in. If we weren't happy with this prefab, I'm just making sure that I'm on the right screen, I would press escape and we go to this tab here and we show the bounds. Now with a left click you have to be reasonably close to be able to highlight these, so you can see that I'm too far away now to click it off. But with a prefab highlighted, now bearing in mind this doesn't have to be a prefab that we've added ourselves, this could be a prefab that Random Gen's thrown in. Maybe you want to build a bridge here but there just happens to be a house, I might need to just slide that house out the way or delete it altogether. So the way we do that is highlight the prefab, press K to bring the properties box up and delete prefab. So again, you can see it's made a nice lovely little hole in the floor. The prefab's gone. Now if I put use back onto the other screen, I'll go back into game and I press save. Boom, there you go. It's took the prefab off the XML. Now I'm going to exit out here once more. We'll get use back into the game view, and then I'm going to reload the world editor again and have a little slice sip of coffee while I'm at it. Now I do apologise when I have to load up the proper game, an actual live game with zombies and everything like that on. We don't actually have the export prefab button within the world editor. I don't know if that's something intentional or if it was overlooked. Maybe we can't export prefabs from the editor, I don't know. There might be an actual reason why we don't have that button. So what it means is when it comes to extracting these two streets that I mentioned earlier, we're going to have to load this up into a proper game. But for now, there's one more little demonstration because this is quite a common issue that I run into. We come back over here. Now I wanted to make a couple of little prefabs so that these streets would end with these little dividers here. And as you can see, when I've added this one, I've saved it. And even though I rotated it, it hasn't saved the rotation. So once again, to fix this, enable the bounds, select the prefab, and X is the button to rotate. Now just be aware, the prefab rotates from this block and always this block, which is much easier to demonstrate when you see it. So if I press X once, there you go, it hasn't moved from this spot, and then if I press X again, it's now the right way around and it's lined back up nice and neat. Now that I've got it rotated the way I want, I'm going to press save, and just to demonstrate that that works, we'll exit and we'll load the world editor up yet again. So when it comes to testing terrain changes, editing the roadmap and things like that, the world editor is quite an efficient way to get in and out, have a look, and then think, yeah, that's all right, or no, I need to change, or I need to move something. I mean, bearing in mind you can add the lines to the Prefabs Xml manually, if you know the coordinates and the dimensions of a building or where you want to put it exactly, then you know there's nothing stopping you doing it that way. I found using the highway when I was doing long straights, it was actually quicker to just copy and paste the line and adjust the coordinates than manually place like 20 or 30 prefabs in a row. So you mix and match, you do what saves you the most time, you do what you find easier to do, I suppose. 17 has definitely been a massive quality of life improvement for prefabbing, world editing in general. Hopefully it'll only get better. But we can see here that everything's looking nice and lovely. So we've added a prefab, we've deleted a prefab, we've rotated a prefab. So next, all that's left to do is to have a stab at extracting. Now, this is the second time I've shot this video. I ran into a funny little error when I was pulling out this whole street, and it seems to be, if I just bring my cursor back on, you can see distant terrain kicks in here, and this is, by that I mean this is where the prefab turns from high detail into low poly blocks and stuff like that. And what happened is I extracted from this area all the way down to this junction here. However, it did not extract the actual blocks from this part here. So I don't know if there's just some bug going on or if we have to have these areas in high detail. But when I load up the map and re-extract this street, I'm going to have to be a bit more careful when I actually hit that button to make sure that I can see everything in high detail. I've done some testing. I actually spawned the street back in alongside this one, and although it didn't copy the blocks, it still made a hole at the end of the street for the piece that it was missing, and like the decorations for the biome were just floating in the air. So just something to be aware of. And obviously I know that it's going to happen now, so I'm going to try and counteract that. And if the street extracts okay, then in future we know to make sure that we can see everything in high detail before we pull them out. Now it seems a bit weird because obviously your view distance is a graphics setting. I don't know what actually changes between seeing something in high detail and then seeing the mesh file that would change how we extract from the area. You know, those blocks are still there, so to speak. I don't know, we'll just have to see and work around it, I suppose. But for now, as far as extracting's concerned, we need to load this up in a game. So like I say, the initial plan is we're just going to make 2 prefabs, keep it nice and short, of these 2 streets. Once they're extracted, we'll have a dive into the prefab editor and have a look at tidying them back up, and I'll finish off coming back into the world editor, maybe deleting a bunch of these prefabs here and replacing them with the street. So we don't take up too much time, let's get straight out of here. Now I believe I've already got a game set up and ready. There we go, and that was the other one that I've done, but we'll just load this one up. And like I say, it shouldn't take too long, but obviously it's a little bit longer than the world editor itself. Now, I'm not a big fan of extracting from a live game. We have a lot of other things like zombies to contend with, so blocks could be getting damaged without us realising. The biome loot blocks are actually going to be turned into loot, so it means we're going to be extracting things like trash and bags instead of the actual loot block itself, if that makes any sense. So if you can imagine, if I just get my DM back on, where these bin bags were, this trash would have been one of those blue loot blocks. Now, when I save this as a prefab and I load the map back up, the biome itself might potentially fill this road with some more of those random loot blocks on top of all these little loot bits that we've got. And it's no big deal for some stones and some trash, but you have to be just aware of it, because things like bags, or I don't know, the random containers where potentially it could be empty or filled. If I had, say, some cupboards down here that were the random ones, and you know, I load up one game, they're all empty. I load up another game, and some of the ones that were empty actually have loot this time. If I extract them from this game, they are going to be fixed into the state that they're in when I extract them. I don't think we actually extract the random block that can be either or. It will just be empty or it will be full. Now, I have to test that. I haven't played around too much with the random loots, but like I say, for the biome loot blocks, it's not as much of a big deal. So, extracting a prefab, we can see on the escape menu, we've got the extract prefab button. All we need is to create a selection area, so we'll do that with Z, and I want that there. And then we're going to fly all the way down here and press Z again. It's just for such a big selection area, it's actually quicker just to press Z and have it auto create the box, as opposed to using G or Shift and G and making it bigger. So we've got everything we need there. I'm just going to use Shift and G to bring this in one block there. Now, the only other thing to do is I want to make sure I've got a couple of rows of terrain underneath, and I'll actually replace some of those with terrain filler, just so that, depending on how I do the biomes for this map at a later date, we don't want like sandstone in the middle of a forest or in the middle of wasteland, or however I decide to go with it. But once we've got the selection area to the size that we want, bearing in mind what I mentioned earlier on about the distant terrain stuff not carrying over, I need to somehow, while being able to see, make sure that this is all in high detail. Yeah, I can see the road markings there and the road markings there. So I'm going to press escape, hit export prefab, and give it a name. So we'll call this X custom, oh God's sake, bloody capitals, X custom street 19 meters and test. Now, I'm guessing if you had a dedicated server set up, you can click the save on server button and it would add this prefab to the server's install prefabs folder. Obviously save local is going to put that into my installs prefab folder. So I'm just going to click on that. The console pops open on its own and lets me know that it's saved it. Awesome. Now, before I left click and kill this selection area, I know that this is exactly the right size that I want. So I'm just going to hold in G, and then we'll slide that over to the other side. Make sure that we can see this in all in high detail. Yep, there's the road markings there and the road markings there. And again, export prefab, X custom street 19 meters, test 01. Now, why didn't it tell me that there was already a prefab saved with that name? Right, we'll check anyway. Very unusual. What I tend to find in the editor is if you try to save a prefab with a name that already exists, it would usually pop up a red message and tell you. I just want to try that one more time just to see if that is the case. I don't know, maybe there's something about extracting a prefab that doesn't flag that up. It's not important, it's just something to be aware of. So we've made our prefabs, we're done with this game. The next step is to go back to editing tools and the level prefab editor this time. And the thing to remember is I've done this with streets, but some of those military areas that I showed you in the last video, they could easily be extracted, tidied up into a nice single prefab, and or well, any combination of anything really. It's you don't have to wait for me to release these little things. Now they're not going to be in any of the groups, so I'm just going to go straight to underscore test, and there we go. There's the two prefabs that we'll make. So, are we going to get the full extract? Yes. Yes. Okay, now that has worked absolutely perfect. So we've got the full street, we've got everything that we wanted, 2 terrain layers. So we'll have a look at some quick little edits that we can do. Why am I getting airdrops in an empty world? Beyond me. So I want this sandstone gone. I'm not too fussed about this bit under here. Actually, I am. I'm very fussed about it. So holding shift so that the selection box sinks into the block. Press Z. We're going to quickly move to the other side, because honestly this is much quicker than doing it the other way, manually extending it. You have to skid your mouse all over the place to stretch the box along this far. Ooh, we can see here that we've got an extra layer, so we'll take that off as well. So holding in shift again and pressing Z a second time makes the rectangle square, just extends the selection box between the 2 points that you've chosen. Now I'm going to hold in shift and G, I'm going to drop that down 1 there, and we want all of this stuff to be terrain filler. Do I have any in me bags? Yes we do. So I'm just going to select the terrain filler, press L. Now I know that that shape needs to be done on the other side, so we'll just slide that over there, we'll press L again, and now I'm going to shrink that box to 1 layer, stretch it all the way across the other side, and press L again. That just ensures that we get the layer underneath the asphalt. Now I think that's looking pretty good, so the only other thing to do really is to zap this here and here and press J to delete that off. We'll just machine gun those signs away. Now I'm going to save this. Cool. And just for reference, so I know what I'm looking at when I come back to it, because this isn't the finalized prefab, I'd ideally like to have a look at the mesh file and see what work needs done. Because we can see here I've zapped the road, so let's quickly fix that. Open terrain filler there, we want some actual asphalt. Is that the right one? Yep. Do I have asphalt in my bag? Yes I do. So again just press L. Now it also looks no, it's just the terrain being funny. I was just about to say it looks like I've overwritten the markings, but what will probably happen is if I save that again, and let's just reload this prefab. Right, now looks like the density of the blocks has actually changed there. Okay, so like I say, there's bound to be small corrections that you're going to want to make. You know, maybe I want to save this base prefab, and then I would maybe make another 2 or 3 versions with different layouts of traffic on, and then it means when I come to dropping it into the city, in between playthroughs, I can shake it up a little bit and still make things different while keeping them the same, if that kind of makes any sense. I know sometimes I have a habit of just rambling about all these crazy things that I can picture and visualise that other people just can't, but you just have to bear with us. I've been building cities for close to 3 years now. I just take some things for granted that other people don't understand at all, so I do apologise. I'm trying my best to answer every single question that shows up in the comments, and I think it's amazing that people are able to ask these questions as well, and I'm pretty sure you are helping other people out. Some people are just shy, and some people might just think that I can't be arsed, but I genuinely do read all of the comments, and I like the idea of having a learning resource video with things related to that video being answered in the comments as well. I know that I always have a flick through comments on my tutorials just in case somebody's asked the questions that are on the tip of my tongue when I haven't understand something. So like I say, if there's things that you just want to know in more detail, perhaps you can't understand my lovely Queen's English Northern accent, and you want something just written down that you can actually understand, then don't worry, I'm well aware of how bad the Geordie dialect is. I do try my best sometimes, but you know, if you kind of understand what I'm saying and I do something that you'd like explained in a bit more detail, honestly, fire a question either on the comments of the video or in the Slaan forum thread. I like helping people out, I like having questions and more importantly answers, because the next person with that question, you know, if the answer's already there for them because it's already been asked, saves them time and everybody's happy. So the last thing to do is to load this back up, because like I say, this is taking the idea of the world editor prefab pack to the next level, and I'm doing it with streets, but this could be applied to anything. You could break down an apartment building into a ground floor, a roof and a middle layer, and make a prefab pack out of an apartment. You know, use the same pieces to build a 12-storey apartment that you might use to build a 2-storey apartment. You know, with a little bit of mass block painting and stuff like that, you can get a lot of mileage out of a single prefab. So now that we're back in the editor, we're going to quickly drop this street in, and it was the left hand side. Now, because of the little density thing and missing this here, I'm not going to delete these prefabs. Instead, I'm just going to ask you to pretend that I have, and we'll just import this prefab, get it saved, just to show you that it does actually work. Oh, and I didn't add it to the groups. So we want test, and I want the one that has the thumbnail. I didn't do the thumbnail, god damn it. Was it this one? I can't remember. Okay, fuck it. We'll just stick one in. Hopefully it'll be the one that... Well, it doesn't matter. We know that they were one block too long, but you have seen how to correct that, so we'll just get it in here. So remember, selection box, load into. Don't press load if you double click on the prefab or you press load. As far as I'm aware, it tries to put the prefab at 00 on the map. I would be very wary about saving a custom world when you've done that. So, you know, just be very careful when you're clicking your way through here. If you do think you've done something wrong, exit without saving and jump back in. It takes 2 seconds to re-add a building. Don't save any mistakes. Oh, just tripped out a little bit there. So we can see the selection box for the full street. That would need to come down 1 block, not 2, and then that would line up nicely there. We've got 2 layers of terrain. So there we go. And then we go place prefab, and you can see it tripped out a little bit, but it's done it. Now bear in mind, we did not create a mesh file. That's why this looks like there's nothing there. Nice cactus in the middle of the road. Now again, it's very important, because when I first started doing this, I'm like, oh my god, I've imported this prefab and there's bushes are just making the blocks disappear, there's a fucking cactus in the middle of the path. You know, oh, the world's going to end, I'm going to have to go and fix all this stuff. No, you don't. What you'll find is once we save this and we reload, all of those decorations will disappear. The game will not drop decorations or prefabs because you've got to remember some of the biome decorations on mini prefabs, so things like the little ruins and the rubble piles and stuff like that, they will not spawn on top of another prefab that you've added via the Prefabs XML. So don't worry about that sort of stuff. But just to demonstrate that quickly, we'll save, we're going to exit, and then we're just going to dive straight back in. And hopefully this is going to look all nice and tidy, no cactuses, no missing blocks, and Bob's your uncle. And I'm just going to see how we're doing for time. Bring you back on. Yeah, we're not doing too bad. The first video stopped at 36 minutes, so it seems like I'm back on target, I think. But this is pretty much we're done now, it's just to show you. So, now, what we can see here, other than the fact that I've jumped into fucking 4K resolution, this game does not like being run in the non-native resolution of the monitor. We'll apply that and get some FPS back. So you can see here, where I deleted that row of the prefab itself, if we show the bounds, now what's actually happened is, if you remember, I only deleted those two layers. What I should have done is deleted all the way up and made sure that I captured that, because now every time we spawn this prefab in, but there, look, there we go, it's fixed with stuff here, the density correction. You can see all those little blocks are back, the cactuses are gone. So very quickly, because it's not going to take long at all, I'm going to go back into the editor, and hopefully our street is still loaded up. So if you're creating prefabs and you're dropping them in the game and you find that there's big empty holes next to the prefab, then this is where the tools come in quite handy. Now I'm not liking the way that this is still broken here, so I'm just going to load this prefab up and then we'll go back. Was it this one? Yes it was. I don't know why that hides them. I will fix that at some point. I don't like that, even though it doesn't seem to make a difference. But right, it would have been at the north end. So what I'm suspecting is this: the prefab bound is extending by a block. Now I don't know why, because usually when we press save, the editor does a good job at trimming off excess layers and excess air blocks, but this is very fixable, so don't worry if this does happen. Just remember, you can enable the prefab bounds and check. But as I said before, all I'm going to do is just make sure that I've deleted this. I don't know if something invisible is just being carried over, but that's definitely bigger than the prefab. I'm going to press J. We'll left click, I'm going to save. Now when I show bounds, it's still broken. There we go. There we go. Thought it was going to make a liar out of us there. So all I done was just reload the prefab there. But we can see that everything's fine. The last thing I'm going to show you, we'll go back into the world editor for the 18th time. A little discreet sip of coffee, which isn't very warm anymore. Oh, it's taking a little bit longer than usual. Come on. And there we go. Now why this is tripped out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ah, it's because that's the actual width of the road. So there we have it. Adding, removing, rotating, extracting. We've covered a lot of things. Thank you for being patient and sticking to the end if you haven't left already. The last thing for me to do is to just delete this prefab off because I don't want it here, and this is my test world and I can do without adding loads of random shite. So I'm just going to save that so I know that's good. Next time, I believe there's going to be no set order that I'm going to do things, and making terrain edits was a highly requested feature. However, I'm not ready to make any more terrain edits just yet. I think the next thing for me is going to be adjusting the Splat 3, which is the terrain map. If I just bring the map up and flick this stuff off, or on, depending on how we look at it. So I drew all of this freehand in paint.net. I wanted to build a test environment, a test city, to start playing around with ideas like the streets, the highway, the bridges and all that sort of stuff, just to see how it would look. And very foolishly, I didn't even make the fucking lines straight. These don't line up, and so I'm going to fix these as I go. But making a simple little correction like this caused me no end of grief in paint.net. I totally fucked up me Splat 3 image the first few times I tried it, and I believe it was Red, one of the forum moderators on the official forums, actually posted a little guide which helped me out big time. So I think next time I'll give you an update on where I'm at with the city and the streets. I'll probably release all the new prefabs that I'm making out of these streets as well. And then the next video, like I say, we'll probably cover editing the Splat 3, and we'll have a quick look at other things. But I don't want to keep all the videos dragging on this long, but as I start covering things like making terrain edits, as I'm working through my map, I'll try and capture those points, because one thing I always regretted with Slaan hunting was releasing this massive half city without showing anybody how I done any of it. So hopefully we'll be able to follow the process from the ground up this time around. And I mean, let's be honest, we've seen worse looking demos than this, and I cannot wait. I mean, I don't intend to do these streets on the full map, but this area, this little inner city area, is hopefully going to really start feeling like a city. By the time we've got some sewers and other bits and bobs in there, it's going to start looking funky. But we'll start talking about Slaan hunting at a later date when I know how I'm actually going to build Slaan hunting, because like I say, at the minute, I'm still 500 hours in Alpha 17, messing around, pissing about. And when I say 500 hours, I mean about 500 hours of just edit time and prefabbing and dicking around. I think the actual play time is probably only around about 30 or 40 hours. But I don't know, I grew up with things like SimCity 2000, and being able to build a city and then play a cool zombie first-person survival game in said city is just like having your cake and eating it for me. But anyway, I'm starting to ramble. Hopefully you have found this video extremely useful. Don't forget to comment, like and subscribe. More importantly, if you don't do none of those things, download the prefab pack and the Hazuta Mountains world from the forums and check this stuff out. The more people that are playing with the mod and are messing about and making prefabs, the quicker things like this get done and the happier everybody is. I'm never going to give up my job to be a full-time YouTuber, so these are simply because I enjoy doing it, and I get a lot of questions asking how. And you never know, one day a few people might step forward and start contributing themselves. But anyway, this is Slaan checking out. Until the next time, take care, have fun and build lots of prefabs.